Okay, should be all set up. Give it like 2 seconds for the stream to load. All right, Zen Lion is already here. That's that's quick. I didn't expect already people in the chat. Nice. That means that the latency is lower today. I didn't set it lower, did I? I don't remember. No, it's still the normal latency. Yeah, I'm just going to wait a few seconds here. The notification just popped out. We already have a bunch of tracks submitted, maybe like 6 now, 7. So we're just going to sit here and wait for a couple of minutes, maybe chat a little bit, and then we'll get into the feedback. How are you guys doing? Zen Lion, Waldeck, Music, and Enroll Deville already here, at least in the chat. There's more people that hopefully are going to show up in a few seconds. I don't want to immediately get into the feedback today, because then, or in general actually, when it comes to these feedback streams, because then the people don't have time to see that the stream is live. Not Was, how are you doing? It is very warm in my apartment today. It's not great. I can put it on here because I have a few things that I want to show. But yeah, as you can see, we already have quite a few tracks. We're starting, well, the tracks start here, but we're starting here today, of course, because there's a Patreon over here that's submitted, and they get priority in the feedback stream. So yeah. Just waiting a couple of more minutes for people to join in. I still see the viewer numbers go up. Again, everybody who is new here, you can submit your tracks in my Discord over here. There are a few rules when it comes to this kind of stuff, mainly that you grant me permission to play it on YouTube so that you don't copyright strike me. When you release stuff, either make sure that you're not submitting it to the content ID system on YouTube, or make sure that before you release it, the distributor knows that my channel is whitelisted, and that is something that you have to organize with your distributor. The other thing is, don't submit works that you don't fully own the copyright to. Of course, that is normal. You guys know the reason for that is, again, has to do with copyright ID and that kind of stuff. I try to avoid it as best as I can. I haven't checked if there's any remixes or stuff in here, but it doesn't seem to be like that here, at least for now. There's always going to be things that slip through it that you know, have some copyrighted stuff in here that get picked up just from the nature of how Psytrance is. There doesn't tend to be a lot of or a lot of licensing, right? And there tends to be a lot of sampling from other things. And sometimes those things just kind of slip through, that kind of stuff. Yo Pro, salute. Thank you, thank you. Elliot Vespiglio, welcome. MindB, welcome. Greedo, welcome. CBPM, welcome. Seeing as MindB is here, I should probably also shout this out. Let me quickly open up this channel over here. I run 3 channels at this point. It's kind of crazy. I have 3 YouTube. I have 2 technically, right? My projector channel, which is where the stream is on, and then I have also projector, which is the second channel. I need to make sure that this is in the headphones. That's the only thing I forgot. And then the third channel that I run, which is kind of like a share channel for the label, is of course Eclipse Sound Syndicate. Today I posted another mix. This is a nice mix over here. Visuals by Subject Ultra. Some cool visual stuff over here. But yeah, so this is the channel over here. MindB reminded me that I needed to shout this out because this just released like 2 hours ago. So everybody, after the stream, I'll link it and you can go watch the whole thing. I would appreciate it if you watch the whole thing through from start to finish, because that makes it good for the algorithm, essentially. My track has a vocal in it that was taken from a movie. I think it altered enough so I don't think that it would get picked up. Yeah, no, that is no issue. like it's technically an issue, but at that point, right, if I start excluding stuff that is, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot even talking about this, because it does say, right, no copyright whatsoever, don't submit works which you don't fully own the copyright to. Like, that is the rule. But if I really enforce that rule, half of the tracks wouldn't be able to be played, and I wouldn't be able to see whatever, or I wouldn't be able to see from the beginning which tracks are the ones that are copyrighted and stuff. Like, what I'm excluding is purely the remixes and that kind of stuff. That is the main thing that I'm excluding. If there's like a remix in here, or an edit, or a bootleg, or whatever it is, then it just does not get played. Remind me, yes, exactly. So those things are completely excluded, but like movie quotes and that kind of thing, I think it will be fine. Like, I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff. Illusion, welcome. Nice to see you here. What else? I think we can get started. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. Do you want to talk about this now? No, I'll talk about that maybe later, if I don't forget. Yeah, let's get into it. We'll start, of course, with this track over here from Enroll Deville, because he's a patron, or they are a patron. So this is Enroll Deville with Sundown. Let me get the analyzers up, and then we can start listening. Tell me if it's too loud, if I need to change balances, that kind of stuff. Very bright and melodic. It's not something that I expected from you. It's also a little bit too stereo, I would say. You probably would want this over here, because now it sounds so wide that it's sounding huge, it's sounding nice, but this doesn't translate to mono. I like the idea. Kick and bass could be a bit louder. Kick and bass could also have some more weight to it. This stuff is way too loud, those melodic things. Is the music too loud for me? Minus 15 dB then. I took it down 4 more dB, so it should be better, hopefully. The main issue that I have with this track is just the priority in the mixing. Like, the synths are a little bit too loud, a little bit too upfront, and the kick and bass feels like it's being drowned out a little bit here. I also heard some rises that were like very loud, even though they're very supportive elements in general. If you like my new track, it's been a while since I uploaded. I leveled up, by the way. I also do. You are going to school for it, so I do expect you to level up. Nice little flute thing here. I like that a lot. idea-wise, this track is there. I would say it's a nice track. You are saying that you pull the track ready to remix. It does need a better mix. This track. The mix is really where this track is almost. I would say it's falling apart here because it's not like the main balance isn't there. Very much duct and LFO. Music is still too loud a bit. Did I lower my mic? I didn't lower my microphone either, did I? I'm adding 5 dB on top of the microphone. I also feel like sometimes with the bass line you're going too low with the fundamental, like sometimes it goes down here in like C sharp D area. At least that is what it feels like to me. I don't know if that's really true because it's a little bit of a mess down below here. Like these notes over here, they don't seem like they have a lot of power. I think it's a combination of the low note and just the overall dirtiness of this lower frequency area. Like it's not really nicely defined, I would say. I don't know where that's coming from. But yeah, it's definitely, you can definitely hear that this is one of your older tracks because I've heard your other work and that's definitely like mixed better. Musically speaking though, I like the idea. I like it. I think Mind B needs to turn his amp down. When it comes to like the loudness differences, I'm assuming that he's talking about the difference between the music and like my voice. Because everybody can just turn down the volume. Then we go back here. Somebody earlier said that I apologize in advance for submitting drum and bass again rather than psytrance. That does not matter. I don't care. Whatever you submit, I will listen to it. I've thought about doing more other genres just so that I, one, diversify my content a little bit, because that's always a good thing to do. And two, so that I don't get those endless comments of people apologizing for not making the music that I make. I don't know where that is coming from, but there's like this idea that I don't like other music, which is absolutely not true. Like I tell everybody all the time, you can submit whatever you want in terms of genres, in terms of styles. I'll listen to everything, and hopefully I also share passion for music, even if it's not necessarily psytrance. Like I don't think that my feedback is less enthusiastic or less is maybe like lower in quality when I'm not listening to psytrance. Is that the case? Maybe if you're talking a screamo voice, the level would be better. Or grunt voice. Then I would need to teach myself how to do that. Thank you. Arrangement good. The arrangement is sounding... Yeah, there's obviously always things that you can improve, and when you go back into the track, you will probably hear yourself as well that there's things to improve on both the arrangement and maybe the sound design and just the musical idea. But I don't dislike the musical idea right now. There's not something that says to me like, oh, here, you should probably do this differently. Sorry, I'm eating candy. That's the bag that you're hearing. Glip, welcome. Game Boy Z, welcome. Any other people? CBPM. No, your insight is super appreciated, hence why I could keep submitting work in progress. Then please stop apologizing for the music that you submit. Just stand by, I make drum and bass, that's okay. Like, I don't care that it's not psytrance. You don't have to apologize for that. I like it. I don't really care. Just do make the music that you want to make. That should be the real message that you should take away from my stream. M&M candy? No, these are candies that we have in the Netherlands. I can show here on the full screen. I think every Dutch person probably knows this candy, right? It's the things that have the little like blobs on it. There is autofocus on my camera, but it doesn't work when I'm recording the way that I do with OBS and stuff. I can probably get it in. Yeah, you can see it has like these little bobs on it. I don't even know the Dutch name for it anymore. But they're tum-tums. That's the normal one, and then they put these like little blobs around it. Drop? Nee. I believe the originals are called tum-tums. And then they put, normally tum-tums, they have a layer of sugar around them, but the tum-tums are just the gummy little blobs of gum. But these, instead of having a layer of sugar around them, which makes them tum-tums, these are with these little balls, which are technically also made out of sugar, but they're just a little bit different. And they're great, and they're one of the only Dutch candies that I can actually get here in Italy in just my local store, so that's very nice. In Poland, this is... I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I'm sorry. It is referencing some kind of berry, I believe. The original name of these candies in Dutch. I don't remember. If I just remembered the name, I would tell you guys, obviously, but I don't. Tum Tum Deluxe. Maybe that's the name. I believe they were referencing some berry, isn't it? There might be a Dutch person that actually knows. I used to love wine gums. Wine gums still exist. At least I've had them. Like when was I in the Netherlands? I think December. Yeah, because with my sister's birthday, I was in the Netherlands. We went to Jasmine, which is the like big candy store where you get to fill your own bag and then they just weigh it and you pay by weight, whatever type of candy that you make. Pulcho. Hey projector, I sent you something on Discord, hope you remember me, lol. Yep, I'm still making music. This is very crazy. the fact that he even found me, this is very crazy. This is the guy that I don't think, no, I haven't mentioned him in any streams before, but he is in middle school, was the only other producer that was in my class, and he at the time knew a lot more about production than me. But it's nice to see you here as well. Very cool. Funny how the things kind of come back. I don't see, at least, unless this is you. Oh no, here. Nice. Ah, that's why. I saw this message. I was like, wait, but I didn't realize that this was actually you. Cool, funny. Anyway, we'll get to that when we get to that. We're obvious, of course, the rest is going just in order. So now we will listen to this one over here. Solace for the Weary. We have already listened to this, but as he said, I've improved it a bit. So we listened to this, I believe, last week. We'll just hear it again to see how it improved. Oh my god, you're making me cry, bro. This is so long ago. How long has it been? Maybe like 6 years, something like that. I do remember us sitting together in one of the apartments at my house, making music. We built like a makeshift studio there, and we produced like a song there. Kick and bass is sounding nice. You didn't resample it, which I would recommend that you do. At least the way that you maybe you resampled all of the notes. Because the kick looks clean, right? The transient, there's no bleeding into that transient. But over here, it's like being pushed up. You get a lot more punch out of it if you don't do that. If you just resample one note and then fade out from like this point over here, so that it doesn't go up again and push that transient into the master limiter. Would be cool if this synth had a little bit of an announcement coming into it. Because now it just kind of changes. Maybe that fill is a really good place to make the announcement for that synth actually playing. Music is low now. You guys don't know what you want. I did have to boost it by 60 dB, so that makes sense. I'm not a fan of the drums dropping out there. The main thing I'm not a fan of with this track is that everything is there, like sound design wise. The main drum grooves is there, but the synth doesn't really groove. The synth just kind of does stuff. It feels like it's playing randomly, and there's never really a moment where the synth is actually grooving in a way. Sometimes that is what you want to go for if you're making something like Forsyth or Dark Side or High Tech. Then the synths don't really have a groove to them. But when it comes to like the more progressive stuff, the stuff that I at least think you're trying to do, usually what happens is that you have a set pattern to the synth. Right, so that the MIDI notes may repeat every 2 bars, every 4 bars, maybe every bar. Sometimes you'll have like grid synths where 5 different sounds together form one pattern and they just move throughout a section of the track. I feel like that is a little bit missing in this track. Reminds me of the legendary DB glitch. DB glitch is great. Very good. I did a video on that, right? Cool. It's from what I can remember. Obviously, when I listen to like 20, 30 tracks a day every Sunday, I don't remember every track. But from what I can remember, this is a good upgrade. I like it. I like the kick and bass. I like it too. It's a nice deep kick and bass. We even made a collab. How could I forget the 24 hours of straight producing? That was what I was referring to. We built like a little studio, put it up in one of my parents' like apartments, and then we just sat there making music for indeed like a whole night, essentially. I don't remember if it was exactly 24 hours, but we did do indeed a very long time of producing. It was definitely not a healthy amount. I don't correct it, I do the next one. Yeah, at some point you just have to move on and say, like, this track is done. Which is a good approach. So next up, the drum and bass guy. This is a minimal drum and bass track for today. Still an early work in progress. The Night Sun. Sounds interesting. I like the cover art too. That's very well done there, the lines and stuff. He's one of those people that makes the cover art before making the actual music, which is interesting. I guess it's the same way that people make thumbnails nowadays for YouTube videos, and that they make the thumbnail first and then the actual video. That actually happens. For those that don't know. Hello, Bo. Welcome. A bit more stereo play on these atmospheres would be nice, having them wider so that the drum kind of cuts through the middle. Right now it feels like everything is kind of happening here. It's becoming more mono. It's doing the opposite.
The night sun.
I do like this. Here the stereo field is doing interesting stuff.
Black as Demai.
Are the hats triplet there? I feel like the hats are a little bit out of place here in terms of the pattern that they're playing. Should probably not be triplets. Because the rest doesn't... It's hard to tell for me. I'm not good, as I said many times, I'm not good with music theory. Pulcho will back me up on that. My music theory knowledge is almost nothing. But I feel like the hats were... Yeah, this rhythm is not working for me. When the triplet things, or whatever you're doing there. Maybe it's like a swing thing. Yeah, it's a very distracting groove there on the triplet thing. Other than that, I don't really have any notes. Like, the production is very solid. It's also very loud. I am still boosting things, maybe? I am. Aha. This is what you guys get if you constantly ask me to change the volume. I was boosting this track, which is at full skill by 6 dB. So yeah, it's gonna be loud. Hats do feel off grid. It's either completely off the grid or it's like a triplet pattern. I'm not entirely sure. But indeed, it doesn't really work for me. The rest of the track, though, sounds very, very nice. I'm no longer going to be, unless there's like a really extremely low track, I'm not going to be pushing it up more. Just to prevent any full-scale tracks from being too loud. Maybe sometimes the music is going to be a little bit quiet. Maybe sometimes the microphone is going to be a little bit loud. But given you guys all sent me tracks at different volume levels, I'm not also going to be DJing here. We'll fix the hats, was experimenting. That's understandable. I just think that one experiment failed here. But there's a lot of other interesting stuff that you're doing. Next up, we have two tracks from Dema. Dema Psy over here. One is unreleased and the other one is over here. We'll start with this one here. Unreleased 148 BPM, D sharp 16-bit. Giving us a lot of information there. I like it. Nice little riser thing, I like that. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the key changes that are happening here, the long like melody thing that you're doing. Kick and bass could be a bit better. I'm not necessarily hating on the kick, even though it's slightly clipping, so that's maybe something that you want to address. The main thing that I would change is you're losing a little bit of power in your bassline just from the fact that it's pushed up one way. And this has to do with the amount of processing that you're doing. I do like to see that you're either leaving it so short that any processing doesn't become a problem, or you're actually resampling it. But what I would probably choose to do is try to keep whatever peaks you have kind of equivalent above and below the silence line. That way, if you do end up pushing it into a limiter, it's not going to trigger here too much, because it's not like being pushed up very high. Right now, this, if you boost this another few dB, which is something that you might actually end up doing in the master, in like the final thing, this is going to hit the limiter, where it doesn't necessarily have to do that. You can get more dynamics out of this. You can also get just more volume out of it if you want to, by having it oscillate around or have its energy above and below silence almost equivalent, or at least closer to that. It's hard to explain this stuff because this is getting very technical here. But then again, all of the phase shifting that we're doing in silence is very, very technical. Sound design is really cool. I would like to hear the main sequence that was playing in the last bit. This thing over here, that tang tang tang. That tone thing to be removed at some point, which hopefully over here it's still playing. I would turn that off at some point so that you go maybe into something a little bit more atonal, so that the track actually switches up a little bit more. You are doing a lot of cool sound design. But up until this point, it's all sounding a little bit similar, because that one sequence sounds like it's just kind of continuously playing. I think the snare could be lowered maybe by a dB, maybe 2. Snare feels a little bit overwhelming, especially when it's on the kick. Keep in mind that when it's on the kick, it gets like combined with it, right? Especially the transient, it gets that extra impact from it. I like the addition of an extra tonal layer. It's not low enough that it's going to interfere or clash with the transient of the kick. When it comes to these tonal layers, what I like to do is... I don't have my menu thing on, because I just restarted my PC. When it comes to most of my snares, I do a little bit of this, where you get LFO and you just cut out the transient of it, the part that is actually on the kick transient. Right, on my snares I may do something like this and just like slightly mix it in at maybe 20, 30. But when it comes to these tonal layers, especially stuff that is a lot lower in the frequency spectrum, I cut it out almost like entirely like this with the transient of it, and just have its like tail of it coming through. Because you cannot really hear that because the kick transient is there anyway. And it just clears up a lot of the space. At this point I would probably remove the drums, since you have one synth kind of coming through it very strongly. It would be nice maybe here to completely remove the drums, or the top drums at least, not the kick of course, so that your track gets a little bit more flow in terms of the energy. We're also going towards the outros, so then maybe like a structural way that is not really a great idea. I felt like throughout the track it kind of just went up and then stayed there for a few minutes and then it went down again. There's a little bit of a break in there, but even around that area it doesn't really go down a lot, which is kind of the point of this genre. But aesthetically I like it more when it does have a little bit of flow, a little bit of energy to it, or energy changes to it. It did have energy, the track is very energetic, but it can play more with the energy level. It can try to go up and stay there for a while and then maybe dip down a little bit more, maybe to a little bit of an emptier part. The problem that you have when you stay up with the energy level over a long time, let's say 5 minutes, in this case the track is like 7 minutes, but say that you stay up that high with the energy level all the time, is that at some point you're just going to lose the impact and it becomes boring. Because high energy is only high energy if there's a part of lower energy around it, so that you can compare it with it. Otherwise it's just energy, right? If everything is this high, then is it really high, or is it just all at the same level? I hope that makes sense. When everything is up, there is no up. Exactly. That's what I meant to say. He has another track here. This is Psychedelic Brain. This is a BPM louder, or louder, a BPM faster. So this is 149. We're in G sharp, and this is also 16-bit. Kind of getting the same vibe in terms of the sound design and stuff that you're going for.
They might want to go there to pick up a girl, or they might want to go there and have a fight, or they might want to go there and look. But how do you get bliss? How do you get content? And how do you get joy? How do you share that joy, forgetting yourself and waiting for the next part?
I like this kick and bass a lot. This is how I want your kick and bass to look. Kind of energy above and below the same, the volume essentially. Mastering feels much better on this one. I like the last one as well, the tonality. I don't really, when it comes to mastering, I don't really listen to something specific for the mastering. I just think the overall balance of the track. And that is something that you can achieve in the mastering, but that's also something that you should probably strive for in the mixing stage already. Honestly, the main thing that I listen to when it comes to actual mastering is the track loud enough? Or maybe too loud? And I would agree that in this case the loudness of the track is perfect. This is where you want it. I would say for that last part, the little fill thing that you had going on, you could also remove the drums so that you lower the energy level for a little bit longer. Here we're lowering it a little bit and then we're immediately going back into the highest part. Maybe it's nice to take 1 or 2 segments of the drop where you're not playing the open hat on the offbeat. Like your offbeat hat, your main big hat that is giving a groove. And just have a few like smaller hats, that kind of stuff. Like your these things. These little things in here and the snare. That's usually a great way to go, like, instead of going from low energy all the way up to high energy, you kind of have like an intermediary step in there. I like this segment. The question and answer that you had going on between these very similar sounds. Really cool. This track is really solid. I do agree, yes. Both the last track and this track have been very solid. I do like the kick and bass of this one more. A lot of people pointed out that they like the mix of this one more. But I thought the mix of the last one was fine. This one doesn't stand out as particularly better in that regard. I just think that the kick and bass tonality is better here. Right, there's a difference between the tonality and the sound of the kick and bass and the way that it's balanced in the mix, right? I think the way that it's balanced in the mix for both of them is on the same level, whereas here just the sound of the kick and bass is better. Just I guess the creative part of making kick and bass. Cool. Just like the last one, I would like to hear a little bit more flow throughout it. I do realize, and you can completely ignore this, but I do realize that is because I make a type of psytrance where, like, I make progressive psytrance, right? Where the main thing that you're caring about is the flow throughout the track. Whereas here, in this type of psytrance, that is not necessarily the case. So I am a little bit biased in that, and I feel the need that I should probably say that. But I do think I'm not really a fan of tracks that as I said, go up and pretty much stay up there. There was a little moment in here somewhere in the halfway point where it went down a little bit, and there was like one segment where the kick and bass was just playing on itself, but then you immediately went back into the full drums and the full sound design, and it basically carried through at high energy throughout the rest of the track. So if there is a thing that I would change, that would be it for this kind of track. But I do realize that maybe because I am biased to a type of psytrance that just focuses on that part. I hope you think I've improved. Happy to get feedback at the end. Thanks for your feedback. You're welcome. Then may it be possible we could stay in contact. Twilight is very high energy. Yeah, it just basically keeps it up all the time. So it does make sense that you disregard this kind of feedback, but I would maybe just out of curiosity, I would like to hear what it sounds like if you make a track where there's a little bit more flow into it. It doesn't, by the way, the energy level, it has to do with the kind of sound design, and it has to do with like the amount of elements in there, but you can still have very aggressive, big impact, big like wow factor kind of sound design. That is what you're going for. You just have a little bit less of it, and maybe you use one element for a longer period of time, right? Like you have a one shot and then you have like a big delay coming out of it. And you just do that for maybe 16 bars, and then again, you build it up, right? Instead of just always going to the high energy. But maybe that's, again, as I said, a personal preference. I hope I don't miss the start of the stream while you're here. So we're going to be listening to Zen Lion, Disco Shit.mp3 Basic Master 2024-04-19-17-13. Okay, that's quite a mouthful. I hope that you change the name when you actually release this. By the way, I did see that somebody said, like, is it possible that we can stay in contact? I don't know how open Dema is to this, but if you guys are curious about each other and you want to collaborate with each other, you just can go in here and just private message someone, right? Of course, they would want that. So maybe you need to send them a friend request, that kind of stuff. But if there's a particular track that you like, you guys always should be able to find it in here and then just go to the person and maybe message them if you want to collaborate with each other, that kind of stuff. There's some disco fans in here tonight. I do like that voice line. That's I've heard. I don't know which particular track it comes from, but I hear that one in the Boom Festival 2023 set from Asterix a lot, because that's one of my favorite sets. I would say it's my favorite set. Yeah, I listen to that a lot. Anyway, disco stuff by Zen Lion, or disco shit, whichever you prefer. And it was put, this is my contact. I don't think you can send like email addresses and links and stuff like that in my YouTube chat. Didn't want to bother you. A little bit on the quiet side here. I like the sounds that you have. You're going for a fairly dark theme with the kick and bass. But I feel like, especially with the ARP that you have going on, that's not really reflected in the sound design. The kick could also be a little bit louder. I do like the tonality of the kick and bass. I'm not really a fan of the vocals playing everywhere. I think they're going to have much more impact if you just play them in like maybe a fill somewhere over here, stuff like that, and make some space for them. Would also love to hear a offbeat hi-hat and a snare. This is a very bright riser. Little bit of extra stuff in here, maybe like a Reese bass under this would be nice. Hello Steels, welcome, welcome. If you remove the vocals from this part again, if you're not just like spamming the vocals everywhere, then I think that this part is really nice. Again, the bass line is a little bit loud for the kick. I really like this part. The drums on top are very nice. That sound is a little bit loud. Again, the riser is very loud here. May I send a track which is already released but exclusive to Audio's platform? The only two rules that there are is that you submit or that you give me permission to play it during the live stream and the subsequent video. This means that you're not allowed to copyright claim the stream on the basis of me playing your music. That is rule 1. And rule 2 is don't submit any works that you don't own the copyright to. So no remixes, no edits, that kind of stuff. As long as it's within those two rules, you can send whatever you want. I hope you think I've improved. You did indeed improve. There is still a lot of extra room for improvement, of course. but from what I remember of your old tracks, there was like really like technical issues and just things being completely off. There were a few things that I pointed out, like mix-wise, that I don't agree with. Main thing that I should probably say is that some of the synths, at some points when you're playing a lot of synths, the kick and bass became a little bit overwhelmed. Your high end could be a little bit brighter if you wanted to. Like it's a little bit on the dull side. That one riser is like an issue that should probably be lowered by maybe 18 dB, 12 to 18 dB. So that is like a real sticking point issue, because that just kind of hurt my ears with high frequencies playing for so long at such a high volume that's going to hurt. So you want to turn that down. The final thing that I'll say is that when you're writing a track, it is the most important thing to keep in mind is that everything should have a function within your ultimate idea. And I think sometimes people forget that in psytrance, in the pursuit of cool sound design. Cool sound design, as cool as it is not enough just on its own. It needs to be part of an idea. So the reason why, for example, Dema released, or the guy removed his tracks again. That's a little bit annoying, but okay. The tracks that Dema just posted before, the reason why those two tracks work is because there's a lot of different sounds in there, yeah. There's a lot of different ideas in there, yeah, but they're all kind of working together towards one final like overarching idea of the track. And I feel like that is a little bit missing over here. Like, to give you an example, the vocal just kind of playing at random points, it doesn't feel like it's part of any of the other ideas. Do you know what I mean? I could have understood it much more if there was like a rhythm being set up, and after every 4 bars, that rhythm got interrupted by the disco vocal. That is like a concrete plan for that sound. Whereas right now, it just kind of feels like, oh, I'm going to do some cool stuff with this sound, and I'm going to do some more cool stuff with the sound, but you're not really taking into consideration the whole track. Which is, I mean, that is a mistake a lot, or not really a mistake even, but that is something that a lot of producers do, is that they're not really writing the whole track. They're just going kind of like sound by sound, and they're just trying to do cool stuff. But you're not really trying to do cool stuff with the sound. You're trying to make a cool track, right? Which is different. So I think there is the other room for improvement that you can have. Next up, we have Alex Tricks. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I don't. Melody Who, what's that? Hope you like the artwork as much as I do. Buzz is clearly buzzing. I do think he is very much buzzing. I do like the artwork. It looks very cool. I don't know if it's AI generated or not, but either way, it looks very nice. I don't want to say like it looks AI generated, because then it would be insulting if he did make it from scratch. I kind of did that already now, so I'll just let it go. Anyway, Buzzing Lightyear by Alex Tricks. Technical improvements though? Yeah, as I said, the mixing and the mastering, that is just something that you'll gradually become better at. That is not something that I can necessarily explain to you by saying, oh, you just tweak this knob, tweak that knob. You have to train your ears for that. And that's something that will happen through just going through the courses of what you're doing, going through your music school, that kind of stuff, and just producing a lot. Ooh, lovely kick and bass. Here's maybe also a good example of different elements working together to make one idea, right? And that there's one shot after one shot after one shot. They're not really placed on top of each other. It's just one behind another, which is an idea, right? I'm going to give you this sound, I'm going to give you that sound, I'm going to give you that sound. Vocal could be a lot louder. You want that vocal to come out. I think it's even like heavily filtered. I would open the filter up a bit more, especially towards the high frequencies, because those are important to understanding what is actually being said. I don't remember which track, but there's a track in my favorites playlist that reminds me a lot of this track. Like even down to some of the rhythms being the same. Thanks for the direction, brother. I hope to impress you someday soon and maybe we can collaborate. When it comes to collaborations, that's a long shot. I probably am only going to collaborate with people from the label from this point on. Right, because that's where my focus is musically. But maybe someday, you never know.
Would you like some tea, Mrs. Nesbit? What? It's so nice.
It's probably a good idea to filter it a little bit like low pass on the effects and that kind of stuff, so that the vocal just has that little bit of space. Maybe even a filter going down to like 10k is enough, and then going back up. Very strange pattern here on the delay. It felt like it's stuttering a bit. Or it like got chopped out at some point. I'm not sure if I like the surprise happening there. I thought like, hey, this is a strange place for an outro, but then the actual track continued to play. I'm not sure if would leave that completely empty there though. Maybe just like a reverb too, that it's still kind of connected to the other part of the track. Although I have heard that kind of technique being done very, very well. Very notably, Lunarium with his track Luna Clips. Again on Eclipse Sound Syndicate, and also in the most recent mix that I released. be honest, I'm not really a fan of the snare here. Like, it's okay, right? It's not like standing out in the negative way, but it's also not really grabbing me in a positive way. It just kind of, it feels a little bit dull. It feels, in my opinion, a little bit too long. But then again, I am a fan of very short, snappy snares, which is not really the Psytrance, I guess, style, the Psytrance vibe. A lot of the samples that I also have don't really like that. They tend to have like a very strong tail. Even some samples that go, like, in terms of volume, go down and then back up and then down again. I'm really not a fan of that. I really like the snappy, kind of curvy snares. Real snares have curves, is what they say. Cool. I do really like it. Very nice track. Next up we have Magic Panda. Let's go Master PP. I guess this stands for faceplant or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe just... yeah, no, let's not say that. Anyway, Magic Panda with Let's Go. Not a fan of the hard panning. The panning effect could be a little bit less. Stereo wave wise, you're going a little bit over here. Don't fuck around, this is kind of high professional. I do agree, yeah. This is getting to the point where it's just properly put together, start from finish. At least that last track. More drum and bass, yes. Plus percussions. No, the last track. Yeah, I know. I'm keeping that in mind. There's a little bit of a delay on the stream, so I'm keeping that in mind. Overall, I would say that this track is maybe a little bit too squashed. I would also like to just hear some more dynamics in the way that it's written, because now there's always a sub bass playing, making everything very loud. Ah, you're pushing the limiter ceiling down. I was like, what is happening? Why is it's volume lowering? But you're pushing it into a limiter and then you're pushing the ceiling down. That is actually a common trick that people use. Automating your limiter ceiling so that you get more power in the parts where you're automating it, where the drop actually plays. There's some cool stuff in this track. I like the musical idea. The mix is decent when it comes to the spectral balance. I just think that you're, especially for this kind of drum and bass, which is a little bit more melodic. It's not like necessarily super aggressive like the last drum and bass track that we saw, where it's really focused on the bass part. I would like to see one, as I said, a little bit more dynamics in the way that you're writing, especially with the sub bass. Give it a few more pauses where you have more space for the track to go down, and just also with the mix itself, you can be more dynamic. This doesn't have to be all flat, all sausage, super, super loud. It feels too loud for me. Anyway, now we go back to an old friend of mine. Let's see what Pulcho has been up to for the last, I don't know, like 6-7 years. How long has it been? The mix is perfect. The musical idea is really cool. It definitely shows that you have been producing longer than me, technically, right? With the whole ideas and that kind of stuff, you get a feel for that over the years. What I think you're just missing is the technical know-how of phase shift and how filters impact the punch that you're getting out of bass lines and kicks and how they're bleeding into each other. And that is something that we are doing inside of that. That's basically all that Psytrance is when it comes to like kick and bass mixing and stuff like that. Does this? Yeah, that gets removed then. It's very annoying. Let me just put this over here. Okay, let me quickly get a kick and a bass so that I can show that, what I actually mean. So we're gonna get ourselves a kick here. I'll just make like 4 bars. Okay. Get myself a MIDI track with bassline. Just going to try to do this as quick as possible. This one over here, of course. I'm gonna do one day a kick and bass speedrun. Getting a little bit of distortion out of that, so let's turn that a bit lower. And then I'll group these and I'll put on a size scope. So, when it comes to kick and bass in psytrance, this is usually what we're looking for. It gets destroyed a little bit here because that's just how the buffer works. This is now bigger because I upped my buffer size recently. But essentially, when it comes to kick and bass in psytrance, what we are looking for when we are creating our kick and bass is that the kick plays and then it stops. And then the bass note plays and then it stops. And then the bass note plays and then it stops. What you have, Pulcho, is that it's kind of bleeding into each other. And the reason for that has to do with filters. One of the most given advice to people in the music production community is to high pass all of the stuff that they're doing, especially on the master. I hear this a lot where they say, just put a high pass on it. It can be at 20 hertz because all of the stuff below it, you don't want that, and it doesn't really affect anything. But it does. So let's put this in front of the size scope so that we can actually see. And I'll turn it on and you can see how it actually impacts the kick and bass massively. So if I turn it on, it starts bleeding into each other. You see the kick kind of continues into the bass line over here, and it continues into this part over here. And you can see the transient becoming all wobbly. And if I turn it off, you get those neat individual pockets where it goes to silence and then the note starts to play. What that means is that even if you just have like one note in here, because of that high pass, or whatever process that you're doing, maybe a bit of multiband filtering, maybe there's some other things in there. But like the MIDI note is this long, right? It stops right over here, technically. But with the filter engaged, if I just listen to this thing here, you can see it's longer, right? So that is what the filter is doing. It's extending these lowest frequencies because filters are phase shift and phase shifts are... No, filters are made with phase shift. So the way that a filter is implemented is by shifting the phase, which means like extending frequencies and like making stuff longer, basically. I don't want to go into the very technical part of it, but you can see kind of what it's doing. This is like a very clear pocket. It starts here and it stops here, whereas here it just kind of wiggle. It continues. It's even playing up until here. It doesn't go to minus like 60 up until like this point over here, where it really starts to trail off. Right? So that is the only real thing that you can improve about it. And there's probably just some process somewhere where you're mixing your kick and bass that introduces a little bit of phase shift. What we tend to do when it comes to psytrance is that we just resample. So resampling, what that means is that you just make an audio recording. Say that I want the phase shift that this filter brings. I just have to record it from the group. Right? And then literally what you have to do, what you can do is you can just say, okay, I'm going to remove this. And this is now my baseline. And then from here, you can start to basically start creating your baseline out of audio clips. I think I messed up the recording a bit. It seems... Oh no, there it is. Yeah, now you have your baseline and then you can do it like that. And that means that it's the filter is already captured in this waveform. So you can just turn this off and you can fade it out. Right, like this, add a little fade to it, make sure that there's space enough for the transient over here, and then you should be all good. Damn it, you're more skilled to me than me now. I miss the old times. I mean, that happens when you get to do this as a full-time job. Speaking about that, I wanted to show you guys something. At least something that I find interesting. Let me open up. Yeah, this over here. Adobe Premiere. Oh wow, it's gone up even more. Adobe Premiere this week, 85 hours. So this is actually my full-time job, is editing. This is a little bit off. I left my PC on at least 2 nights where Adobe stayed on, and I obviously don't. Any time that I have Premiere open, I'm not continuously editing. Like sometimes I go out for a walk in the middle of an edit and that kind of stuff. But I would say like I'm mainly doing editing nowadays. But I do still do a lot of work on music. Anyway, I think it's been like 1.5 hours-ish. So it's going to be time for my little break. And I'll put on some of my music. Of course, the mix that came out today. I'll put that on so that you guys have some nice visuals as well. You guys have something to look at. Other than my massive forehead. And I'll play from here. Because these are the 2 tracks that are coming up for release on Eclipse. I guess next month in June we have 2 tracks coming up. Do you really hear the difference when the sidechain doesn't work good on transient? I mean, when there is some delay in your sound card and sidechain works with delay, so transient overlap. I don't really know what you mean by that. If you're referring to this stuff over here, this has nothing to do with sidechaining. This has everything to do with resampling and filters. And yes, you do hear that. Specifically, you hear it more the louder it gets. So you might not hear it when you're listening to it at 50, 60 dB on your headphones, but when you hear it in comparison to a track that doesn't have this problem, when it's like really overlapping, you hear it in comparison, for example, on a festival. So if your music gets played on a festival, people will notice like, hey, wait, there's less punch in this track. This track doesn't, hit as hard as the other tracks that are being played that don't have these issues. That is the louder the music gets, the more that you hear details, and this is one of the details that you hear more when it becomes louder, essentially. And to be honest, the same is true with sidechaining. If your sidechaining is off, right, where let's say that the sidechaining is happening over here, then yeah, you would hear that as well, because the transient is then being covered up by other stuff. So if you're doing LFO tool and your LFO tool is off for some reason, maybe you're using Ableton like me, and there's like some plugin delay compensation issues, then yeah, you can have issues with the transient not cutting through the mix because maybe your sidechain is engaging in this part over here and there's still sound playing over here. That can be an issue. I like it when you respond to feminists in short, the cure for stupidity is music. I have never responded to a feminist in short, just women. If you think all women are feminists, then there's something seriously wrong with you. I thought about stopping with those kind of shorts purely based on that reason, because sometimes the amount of misogyny in my comment section is unbelievable. It's really terrifying sometimes. If there's one thing that I don't want is for me to be seen as somebody that encourages that kind of behavior. To be honest, I think it's what you said is really bad. Just here, it kind of shows what you're really thinking. To be honest, I'm sorry if it wasn't meant that way, but I don't respond to feminists. I respond to women, which is just different, right? But there is a few people that my goal at the end of the day is to entertain you through subversion, which is, oh, I'm watching this video. Oh, wait, no, it's a projector video. That's the joke. I'm not necessarily trying to be, how would you say, trying to be against some people in the video. There's also that one of the reasons for the fact that I also respond to men is that I'm not just out there trying to spread the message that women are bad or something like that, whatever it is. Any misogynistic message, I'm against it. Sorry, joke. Well, then you should probably learn to tell jokes in a different way, because the way it came out in the chat, of course I cannot interpret that, but the way it came out in the chat, it sounded like you were just saying misogynistic stuff. which is not tolerated by me. I'm sorry. And I don't want that in my chat. I don't want that on my YouTube channel. I don't want that anywhere. Yeah, and sometimes I see it in my comment section and it really bothers me because my viewer percentage is 98% men. And I think that is part of the reason. Sorry, man, I have to go now. See you, projector. It was a pleasure. Thanks for the tip. You're welcome. I'll shoot you a message on Discord later, and then we can have another chat, something like that. It's nice to catch up. Yeah, I'll put on the mix. Sorry, there are a few tangents here. I'll put on the mix, give you guys a little bit of time off away from me, and then I'll be right back. Anyway, these two tracks, they're currently set still as ID, but these are the ones that are going to be coming out. For the first break, I'll play this one, and then for the second break, I will play this other one over here. And then we should be all good. See you guys in a bit.
Being a player, to me, that's one thing. It's a fun game. But where the real food is in the social aspect, where you get to meet people and play them a game and have a fun, competitive game. You do the best you can, but if you don't win, you won anyway. Because when you lose, you win too. Because if you're paying attention, you learn stuff.
Whatever you want to do, believe it, believe it, believe it. Even if you don't believe it, play the game of believing.
I think I'll play this track in the next break. Then we can hear the whole track. This is the upcoming Mind B track, and then before it is my upcoming release. One is releasing on the 4th of June, which is my birthday, and then the other one is releasing the 15th of June. The Mind B track is releasing the 15th. My track is releasing on my birthday. Which track are we up to on the stream? The one on the stream that was playing was my track, of course. The one that we're up to in the feedback stuff is Ryan Stegger over here, which is actually the last track that we have for now. So you guys should keep submitting if you have more stuff for me to listen to. Anyway, let me just quickly pull up this. I did move, yeah. Get that back right in position over there. Okay. So we're up to Skinny Official with Overload, also known as Ryan Stegger in Discord. I don't know if that Ryan Steggen, if that's Dutch or not. If it is, hallo, welkom. Thank you. I guess. I don't know. Anyway, this is Frenchcore. Cool. 210 BPM. This is going to be fast, guys. Also maybe loud. German. Aha. I think my stereo analyzer broke. Give me a second here. Yeah, that looks better. That looks more normal. Stereo analyzers tend to do that for some reason. They just give up at some point. I like it. I think the bass line is playing 16 notes. I would turn that into maybe 8 notes, or even maybe just play with the melody itself. Yeah, that's 8 notes, right? That might actually be quarter notes if you play it at that rhythm that I just played. The main lead isn't really coming through. I feel like all of the supportive elements are mixed a little bit too loud and the main lead is mixed a little bit too quiet. Like it feels like I cannot really sing the main lead with that, right? Here again, I feel like the main lead isn't really coming through, even though you're trying to do something melodic here. Overall, I would say not just make it louder, but you can also make it more saturated, that lead. Like everything else is very distorted. This is eerie. It looks very cool, the stereo analyzer like that. Cool. I like it. Sounds very nice. A little bit more aggression on the main lead. Make sure that that really pops. The one of the things that you want for this kind of melodic Frenchcore is that people can kind of sing along with it. Right? Not sure if that stereo is okay. It looks okay. This will translate well. Right? Like the stereo is over here. Like it's very mono. Even though it's kind of being pushed out to the side. What you're seeing over here is not necessarily the sound being very wide. It's the sound being very loud, right? you can see that the most energy is sitting over here, and that is just coming from the clipping. And what you're essentially doing is you're introducing a lot of differences in here. So there's not a lot of stuff happening over here. It's all towards the extremities. That is just loudness. That is not necessarily width, right? Because we can see the overall stereo width over here in this measurement. And this is the point where it gets too stereo. So you can see this is still very mono-compatible. In terms of how wide it is, this is going to translate basically the same to like a club system, which is essentially what we want when we're learning about mono stuff. I don't know how to read this analyzer. It is fairly easy to read. There's multiple parts to it. Over here we have the panning. So if something is panned to the left, you see it over here. If something is panned to the right, you see it over here. This is the stereo width. So if it's all the way up here, the sound in the left and the right speaker is identical. If it's all the way down here, the left and the right sound are exact opposites of each other. So if the left sound is going down full scale, then the right sound is going up full scale. I can give some examples. That will make it much easier to understand. Let me get my serum, and we'll just get ourselves a sine wave. Make sure that I can play this. Make it loud. There we are. And I'll get myself a sine. If I pen this left, for some reason it's a little bit distorting now. I guess pan law is also a thing that happens inside the serum. You can see the left channel goes over here, the right channel goes over here, and these are just like averages of the whole thing. If we introduce a second sine wave and we start to sum, where is it? Here, basic shapes. We're going to set the phase all the way down. So if we have one on the left and we have one on the right, we have two sine waves, one in the left channel, one in the right channel. It will just get louder, right? Because we have just two sounds, or as opposed to one, but they're the same sound. So they're doing the same thing. If we start to offset those sine waves, so we start one over here and we start playing the other one over here, by doing, for example, this and this, what you'll see is that you'll get a circle. A very stereo-wide circle in this case. And you can kind of change where that circle is. Now we get an almost perfect circle. Because what is essentially happening is the left channel is mapped on this line, the right channel is mapped on this line, and it just gets the average of the two sounds, or of the two signals, essentially. So if the right channel is playing always at a positive volume, at this volume over here, it's a little bit hard to explain because there's no line over here, but you can imagine that there's a line here which is the right channel, and there's a line here which is the left channel, right? In the same way that we have a right channel and a left channel over here, right? This signal is the left channel, this signal is the right channel. Those just get mapped to this line and this line over here. So you can imagine that in this case, this sine wave is being mapped over here, or this sine wave is being mapped over here because this is on the left. So it gets mapped to this line over here. And then this sine wave is being mapped over here, which gives you 2 points, right? So there will be a sine wave that will be somewhere at any one instance in time. Say that the sine wave is like very high. It will be over here. I can even demonstrate that by just drawing a straight line, I think. Oh, let me do that in a different guide. Let me do that over here. If I draw a straight line over here and just play this, we should probably just see a dot here. Oh yeah, there's a... I guess there's DC offset removal, a DC filter in here somewhere. Yeah, it should stay here as a dot, but it doesn't seem to do that. If I change the volume, it does, but otherwise it gets removed because the DC goes away. But yeah, that doesn't really matter. Anyway, oh, this is so hard to explain. Do I need to go into like individual points here? Yeah, so signals are made up of individual points that just get mapped to over here. and then those points for the left and the right channel are kind of summed together in a vector product, is what it means. That's the actual math behind it. What it essentially means is that, say that the right channel is over here in the positive at this point, and the left channel is over here. Both of them get taken an average, and you end up over here somewhere, right? They get summed together. What would happen if you put too much stereo? Then this graph goes all the way down, because this just shows you the average of all of the points that you see over here. Because imagine, so what you see over here, you'll see 44,100 points per second, right? Because that's our sample rate. So that is you'll see 44,100 points in here being displayed at every second. We cannot really read that. So what we do is we just take the average of all of that. And if stuff is very wide, if stuff is wider than it's high, then the average will go down. Let me get back into Serum. Let me turn on this thing, and then I can show you some interesting stuff that happens. Why is this? It's saturating again, I guess. Let's set them both to 0 and then just do this. So now we have a circle. This is still monocompatible because it's halfway. They're not entirely different. And in fact, if we make this mono, you can still hear that. Even though now obviously in the graph it doesn't show because the graph is on a different chain. Even though it is wide, you can still hear it because it's not being cancelled out. If we set this phase to 0 degrees and we set this to the exact opposite, 180 degrees, we get a horizontal line, which cancels out if you sum it to mono. So monocompatibility, the way that it looks, if it's over here, which as you can see it is, of course it takes a bit of time to get there because this is an average, but if it's down here, then it's not monocompatible. And that is the reason why I say you generally want to stay in this area over here, because that is where you're safe with monocompatibility. In intros, you can go a little bit over it, but generally what I would say is for intros, stay in around this area, and when the kick and bass is playing, you stay in around this area over here. That is how you would read a graph like this and how you would actually, improve your music using that, the practical applications of that kind of stuff. Anyway, we have some more tracks over here. Joined late today. If stream is still open for business, we definitely are. Then he has a submission over here. This is a work in progress. It finishes abruptly shortly after the beat comes in at about 5:10. So be mindful of that. And SoundCloud autoplay, etc. I can play it from here. The bass needs resampling out, but is relatively clean while I'm still working on the track. Looking for arrangement, energy, etc. feedback. Okay. I can give that. Useful info I wasn't aware of. Thanks. You're welcome. JRB with We Are the Music Makers. Work in progress version 18 already. Nice. Very dark start here. The crackling is not in the track, that's me getting some candy.
We are the dreamers of a dream. Dreams.
Cool vocal.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of
I like it. Nice vibe. It's a little bit empty. Some extra one-shots would be nice, a little bit of detail sound, that kind of stuff. I'll share another trick in a little bit of stuff that I like to do. Candy wrapper sounded good though. That is a cool thing, you can resample that. It is in this case just like one thing, one bag. But getting it out of here because it's so long makes a lot of sound. I should probably get a whole bunch, but then I'm scared that I finish them too quickly. Is this Goa? I don't think it's really Goa-ish. It has some Goa influences, but I think this is like in between some dark side and some Goa kind of stuff. Goa usually is a little bit higher in terms of where the bass line is, in terms of the tone. Also, this feels a little bit too complex to just be Goa. Right, Goa is very old school. This does have a few elements in there that suggest that it's like very new sounding, new synthesis methods, that kind of stuff. There's a Goa sound. With all of the rhythms happening here, what you could probably do, which might be nice, is bum 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 bum. Instead of just having the kick doing every other beat, you have it a half note, half note, half note, quarter note, quarter note. Go is probably older than me. Go is definitely older than me. That's for sure. Cool. I like it. I like the arrangement. I think it's strong. As I said, in the beginning, it felt like it was a little bit empty in terms of the... there were like maybe 1 or 2 segments of the track, or of the drop, where it was a little bit too empty. And there I wanted to talk about something that I sometimes do when I need a little bit of extra detail on some of the sounds, when I don't want to have a one shot that is just the synth sound. I like to sometimes layer Foley stuff on top. So I go in here maybe, and then go just search, and then I'll find, I don't know, some random stuff. Can you play it, please?
Now I'm going to...
There's other stuff in here too, which isn't really Foley. But I have some cymatics sample packs in here as well. Yeah, cymatics freebies, the Foley samples, this kind of stuff. Just taking something like this, right, which is like a detail thing, and maybe just taking a very small part of it, maybe like 2 beats and putting a massive delay on it can be really nice. Because this is not necessarily rhythmical, so you get more like a texture thing. It will still hold the like pattern after a while because the delay does that. But in and of itself, it just kind of creates a texture. And then just get the high frequencies out of that. Maybe even not this material over here. Maybe just stuff like this. You just layer this kind of stuff on top. And then you get some cool extra details that you can put like on top of your synths. Projector, als ik bij Serum helemaal rechtsboven global selecteer en vervolgens in het menu rechtsboven naar oscillator settings kijk, dan zijn er verschillende opties beschikbaar, onder andere 1 keer, 2 keer, 3 keer enzovoort. Wat betekent dat? Dat is oversampling. It's basically the quality. Sorry. He's asking what these settings mean over here. These are oversampling settings. So as you can see, it basically upsamples your project sample rate to a higher rate before downsampling again to a lower rate when creating the sound. So internally, it runs at a higher sample rate than your actual project does. Eén keer klinkt altijd het beste. In terms of like sound, there is some people that say that they don't like the sound of oversampling because it introduces a high pass filter or a low pass filter. Because downsampling should create artifacts and stuff like that. So if oversampling is engaged, usually you'll see that there's a filter. That being said, usually the highest oversampling is going to be the clearest sound, the clearest quality. Like this is going to get you aliasing, which is especially noticeable if you distort stuff. Like if I distort something like this, at 1K you're going to get nasty, or at 1 times you're going to get nasty aliasing distortion. I am not the right person to talk to you about that, to explain this kind of stuff. What I'm going to recommend you is that you look up Enroll. He explains this kind of stuff a lot better than me. Enroll. This guy over here. I trust him, especially with oversampling. The bass sounds cleaner and fatter when 1 times is activated. I highly doubt that. I don't think that that's the case, because usually oversampling higher sounds, it sounds better. The only thing that can happen is that you're going to get a little bit more high frequencies at like 20K or something like that. But in terms of the sound in the lower frequencies, you're going to notice no difference between these. We can actually test this. Let's do that. Let's do a little test so that you guys can learn another new thing. Do you guys know what a null test is? Does everybody here know what a null test is? What I'm going to do is I am going to play, let's play a saw wave with a 18 dB filter on there, and let's boost it like that. I'm going to leave it static, just to minimize any potential conflicts and that kind of stuff, just so that we don't have to control for everything. And then I'm going to duplicate this, so that we have the same patch twice, playing from the same MIDI. And I'm going to set up a polarity switch on one of them. So one of them, the waveform is literally flipped upside down. What we also need to do is we need to make sure that they start at the same position, of course. So we have to turn down any random processes and turn down phase randomization. As you can see, I'm not using any effects, that kind of stuff. We're just going to emulate a saw wave in the lower frequencies, kind of deal. In theory, if we change the global settings over here, let's set this to 1 and let's set this to 4. We shouldn't hear a difference, in theory. There's a little bit here, as you can see. But our null test, . Why is this different? Is it really not nulling like this? It isn't. Huh? How is there such a big difference here? Okay. Okay, now it's time to investigate a little bit more, guys. That suggests that there's like an actual big difference in there. There shouldn't be. Huh? Oscilloscope. Let's see. Okay, so this is one time. Right. What's the difference if we turn it up higher? Ah, it's louder. Aha! What you're hearing is the volume increase. It gets louder at one time. Why? That's not good. Oh, that means that we have to volume balance it. Okay. We can do that then. We can do our null test and volume balance it. So now they're both set to here. There's still a little bit of a difference, but we should be able to get it a lot closer. Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference here, but it's... I mean, it's still very high. This one could be a bit louder. I don't get why they're different waveforms though. Do sine waves become different? If we turn these into basic shape sine waves? That's a sine wave. That's a sine wave. They don't cancel. I use 1 times for my tracks from now on. Does it just sum instead of the averaging of the samples? I don't know what you mean by that, but oversampling doesn't really have to do with averaging stuff. What you're essentially doing with oversampling, or at least in theory, there seems to be some kind of problem happening inside of Serum, because this shouldn't really happen. There shouldn't be such a big difference in oversampling than what we hear over here. You can see that we have individual samples right here in this waveform. You can see that we have like individual points. What oversampling really means is that you just put extra points in the middle here, right? So in between each, if you do 2 times oversampling, it will put 1 point in between each of them. If you do 4 times oversampling, it will put 3 points in the middle of them. Like it will put a point in the middle, and then it will go over it again, and it will put a point in the middle, and in the middle over here, right? So in theory, it doesn't really change the sound. Now there's a little bit of practical differences in there, in that usually for oversampling you have to introduce a low pass filter at Nyquist, or slightly below Nyquist, usually at like 20k, which means that the higher frequencies are slightly different. What we're hearing over here, it sounds like a bug for me. And downsampling, you're averaging. No. Downsampling isn't averaging all of the samples. It is just looking at where is the waveform at a certain point. Because the waveform is always going to be the same. And you just take that point again. You just take at your sample rate at the point that you're sampling. and you just take the point. It's not that you take all 4 points and really take an average of it. You just say, okay, at this point, where is the waveform? I'll put my sample there. In theory. Again, in practice, there may be a bit in there. There might be what you're saying, that they're doing some kind of averaging and stuff like that. But oversampling, in the theory of oversampling, means that it shouldn't change any of the amplitudes. And if you're averaging, that may be something that can happen. But if it sounds better every time I do that, I mean, what you're hearing is just the massive volume increase. So it doesn't sound better, it sounds louder. Which of course is going to be better because we perceive better as louder. Right? Again, if I set all of this to 0 and I just play a sine wave. It's a lot louder. You are being fooled by the loudness. Which is a natural thing, by the way. You don't have to be ashamed of that. That is just what happens when stuff becomes louder. But in theory, this should be lower quality. And you can hear aliasing here. At least if I... Let's test some aliasing. We're getting aliasing from the... Or we're getting distortion from Ableton. We don't want that. We want it from Serum. So we're going to hard clip this. Sorry, I'll turn it down a lot. Yes, now we get aliasing. Let's push it harder. Harder still. This one needs to hard clip. Right? This is the one that's... Oh no, this is the one that we're... This is always the confusion when you have multiple things. Yeah. Okay. So the harmonics that the hard clip is generating, we can see them. I cannot pause this, right? Can I freeze the spectrum? Can the spectrum over here be frozen? No. Tools, M-Analyzer can for sure be frozen. Yes. Okay, settings, let's set the resolution up. As you can see, we have our main frequency that we're playing over here, which was this D sharp at 5K. We then get our overtone, our first overtone, and then it goes up and up and up. But as you can see, there's all this mess down below here, all of these extra tones. This is not just the noise floor. In fact, the noise floor is like down here, so this stuff will be the noise floor. But all of this stuff over here is aliasing, which is this distortion going above Nyquist and then moving back down. That is what is happening. It's not just louder, isn't it? It is louder and it's aliasing. So you get nasty digital distortion, which in general is not going to sound good. Because it's out of tune, it's not in the harmonic series. Like this thing over here has no real relationship to these harmonics and your main harmonic over here. So the one time is going to sound worse if you compensate for the volume. At least in theory. And in this case, there seems to be something very wrong with the quality setting over here, and I don't know exactly what is happening. But you should probably aim for 2 times, maybe 4 times to use that. Because that's going to, in general, give you higher sound quality in your sound design. You don't want the digital distortion. At least most of the time you don't want it. Sir, are you doing feedbacks? Yes. Exclamation point feedback, you can submit. You can submit your music, you can get into my Discord, and then you can submit your music. Of course, read the rules before you do. But yeah. The line in between them represents the movement of the speaker, but not the resolution of the internal sound. Exactly. inside of the DAW, this line doesn't really exist. It's just individual points. The line in between them is drawn there so that you can kind of envision the connection. But in what exists inside of Ableton is just these points. So what oversampling does is it makes more points in between them so that you have more quality, more resolution to work with. Imagine upscaling for images. That way, do it with a real Sybase. There's no need for discussion about this. The reason why you hear it better is because you hear it louder. Try it next time and try to volume compensate. And then get back to me to see if it's still sounding better. Because one, I highly doubt that it will sound much different. And two, if there is a difference, the difference that you're hearing is called digital distortion, which is the thing that you really don't want. Yeah, Dan, when it comes to that stuff, he knows a lot more about it and he knows how to explain it very well. But this stuff over here, this will explain it. Anytime you see this graph over here with that one line, again, I cannot really show it. I've explained this before. I've told this before. I cannot really show it, but any thumbnail where you see this graph, let's see if we can find another one. This one over here, that's going to talk about oversampling and aliasing. He even has one on the FabFilter channel. That's probably a good start. The one on the FabFilter channel about higher sample rates is always better. Sample rates, the higher the better. This is over here. Compress or limited, there is a difference. If you're going into a compressor or a limiter, yes, then of course there's a difference because a limiter and a compressor is a non-linearity. Of course there will be a difference then. Baphomatic also has a video on this topic. Once you go into a non-linearity, all bets are off. That's the whole point of a non-linearity. That's also why we're getting the extra harmonics from the saturation over here, or of this non-linearity over here. Once you push it into a non-linearity, you're generating harmonics, you're doing all kinds of stuff to the waveform. So then, yes, of course, all bets are off at that point. But the quality of the plugin will be higher if you turn this value higher. It won't, from all of the theory that I know about music production, one time will be the lowest quality. That's why this is called quality, by the way, and not just oversampling, because oversampling gives you more quality. It's like, think of it as megapixel for audio, because essentially that's what it is. It gives you more points, right? It gives you more of these little points over here. So you get higher megapixels of audio, basically. It is the way that you can think of it. And therefore, the plugin should be able to process it better. What I'm suspecting is happening here is that there's some error inside of Serum. There's some bug that makes it so that the one-time oversampling is not like, or they're doing some strange interpolation or stuff like that. But the higher quality should be better. Good questions, Elliot. I do agree. Yeah, this is interesting stuff. I'm sorry if I sometimes come off as aggressive over here, but that's just my nature, I guess. I don't want to like say you have to do it like that. If you get better results using one time, then continue using one time. But at the end of the day, we're a lot of people here, and I'm trying to teach a lot of people. So we shouldn't argue that the lowest quality is going to get you the highest quality. And that is the thing that I want to debunk. If you are getting nice sounds with one time, use one time. I don't care. But if you want like my opinion and my information, then I would suggest using 2 times. And if you want, 4 times oversampling. Maybe Draft is doing some stuff to lower CPU use as well. That can be the case. Yeah, exactly. Although I would argue that for CPU use, it shouldn't have to turn up the volume that much. I think that is an issue. But there might also be some ways that it's like changing the algorithms that it's using to generate waveforms and that kind of stuff, in which it may be the case that indeed you get like, I don't know, some strange change to the waveform that makes it easier to handle on the CPU or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, but thank you for explaining this. You're welcome. Anyway, back into the feedback. We should hopefully have some new tracks submitted. Let's see. We do have here learning project, sound waves 214 BPM in G. Let's see. Sound waves by learning project. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of the chord progression here. It feels fairly basic. To be honest, I always prefer sidetracks to be just in a root note. Kick and bass is nice and clean. It also sounds very low in its rumble here. You're saying that you're playing it in G, but it's not really sounding like that, and it's not really looking like there's like a strong harmonic in G sharp here. Are you sure the bass is playing in G? It sounds very strange too. It sounds very, very deep. Not like the G that I know. If you told me, yeah, I wrote this track in C sharp with the bass, then I would believe you. Right, in C sharp, the octave below the part where you normally have your G sharp, right? This waveform is all messy looking here for some reason, but that's just one thing. Now it's sounding, this is what G sharp is supposed to sound like. And here I think what's happening here is that the interpolation here is too low to actually hear it. I'm not a fan of the piano melody. This kid was drinking too much coffee. I mean, for high-tech, the high-tech kick and bass part is sounding good. I also like the synths. But I do agree with some of the people that say like it doesn't really sound like some other high-tech that we hear. To be honest, I've said this many times about learning projects as music. And if I'm going to be that honest, it sounds like you heard high-tech one time at a festival and then have been trying to make it ever since while never actually listening to it. I'm sorry if I'm saying it like that, if that is maybe a little bit rough to say about somebody's art, about somebody's music. But that's what it feels like. It's like you're trying to make high-tech from memory without any actual references, because there's no high-tech that sounds like this. Piano is off key as per my ear training. Yeah, it sounds all a little bit wonky here. It sounds all a little bit out of tune, doesn't it? So you're listening to other people's projects and analyzing them. Is the queue full? I am indeed listening to other people's projects and analyzing them. The queue is not full. You can still put in as many tracks as you want. Even I can hear that that's out of tune. It doesn't even make sense in terms of a rhythm with this piano, because before it did, when it was just playing on every kick. But Hi-Tech has really focused on the kick, because the bass, the kick and bass is just so fast that it's not like every bass note is part of the rhythm, but it's just every kick is part of a rhythm, right? To be honest, learning project, I think I've said this before. You need to do a lot more referencing. You need to listen to a lot more of other people's music to see what the genre actually requires you to do in terms of arrangement, in terms of production, that kind of stuff. The mix, as always, is great. I like your kick and bass sound, at least the one that was like higher up in the volume. But the writing part, I just it's just off to me. It doesn't sound like how Hi-Tech is supposed to sound. It just sounds strange. I'm sorry if that's a little bit harsh, but yeah, it just sounds off to me. There's no real other way for me to describe it. And the best way to remedy that kind of thing is just by listening more. Listening to what other people are doing, seeing how your music is different from other people's music, and trying to implement or to create a structure for you to actually make, like more high-techy Hi-Tech, I would say. Because you've been trying for a while, right? You've been trying for a long time. At least you've been submitting to the stream now for maybe like a year, I would say. And it feels like the steps are very small with your... Because you submit a lot. You submit, I guess, almost every week. And sometimes even 2 tracks. Maybe one of the issues that you have is that you try to... I guess... how do you say that? Try to do the production too quickly. Like you just kind of rush it out a little bit. My first track was July last year, I think. Yeah. So that's almost a year now. I mean, if that's the first time you produce anything, then this is okay. Then that's kind of like the natural progression. But the way that you learn to become better, to take that next step and to raise it to a next level is by listening to other people's music. What am I doing? What are other people doing? What is the difference? And how can I overcome that difference? And I feel like this track isn't really doing it for me. I've heard better from you, to be honest. The last project that you submitted last week was sounding better. Sir, please review my track. I will. You're up next in the queue over here. So do I send a link to Discord channel then? Or how do we do this? Yes, exactly. You can just send the link in here in the queue. And then I'll listen to it. That's how it works. ! Feedback. If you aren't in the Discord yet, there will be a link so that you can join the Discord. And then you just scroll down to feedback on stream here. And then make sure that you read this before posting by clicking on the top bar over here. And make sure that you're following those rules, because there are a few rules to this. Mainly that you give me permission to play this track on YouTube, which sounds benign, but that actually means something. You won't copyright strike my channel for playing your music. And secondly, don't submit marks that you don't fully own the copyright to. This means that any remix, bootleg, or edit will not be played. This is final. I don't argue with this part. No one else but you can see the link, right? Yeah, everybody else can see the link. This is just a public Discord server. Download? I don't have to download the track. I'll just play it from SoundCloud. I just play it from here. I don't have to download anything. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I got a little bit confused there. Sorry. Next up, we have Cosmic Currents. He submitted 2 tracks, but we're going to start with 43 Final Demo. As you can hear, I already started playing it, but this is just the intro, so it should be okay. I'll do a private SoundCloud, okay? I don't know what that means. If you want to send it to me in private, then no, that's not okay. You have to put it in the queue. A few more one-shots in here, a few more extra detail sounds would be nice. Something that is not just a sequence or a riser. These synths are a little bit loud. The open hat is missing some stability. I would layer it with a classic 909 open hat, and then you have a nice open hat. I think that would be nice. I like this last part, I like that. I like that you're maintaining the rhythm here, but I would love to hear a little fill. One bar where the kick and bass is just not playing, that there's a little bit of a pause in between. Again, these synths are very loud. The kick and bass is getting overpowered here. You can probably turn your whole synths group down by like 5 dB. Maybe not 5, maybe like 3.5, something like that. Not really a fan of this other synth coming back here. Also this one over here. What I would recommend against, and this is something that I talk about in my top 10 beginner tips, is using or creating like 4 synths and then just constantly switching between them. checking out the kick and bass, you are sidechaining it, but I'm not sure you're resampling. It also looks like this is supposed to be the transient, but this is the highest volume. I'm not entirely sure. Like, there's no good way for me to check this in like a beat thing where it aligns with the beat. Yes, sir, I would lower the synth levels. I am still learning. First of all, you don't have to call me sir. That makes me feel old, so please stop doing that. I know it's maybe a cultural difference. but for me, it just makes me feel old. I'm 26. I'd like to think that I'm still young. And yeah, the second thing, I'm trying to, you know, help you learn quicker, so the fact that your music isn't perfect is the goal, right? So that you can improve it. Actually, the two things that I think are the biggest issue with this track are both covered in that video, so I'm just going to link that video for you. This one over here, I guess tip number 4 and tip number 7 is the main things that I'm hearing. Nights are also cold, sir. I guess I could be a knight, yeah. Our family does have a coat of arms somewhere in a very old book, so I will take it. I think I can also show this concept in a different video. Is it the one that's coming up? No. I guess also in the one that's coming up, but the main one that I can show is in the this one here. Yeah, so the main thing that is happening here is the track gets a little bit boring because you're constantly using the same elements, and that is what I wanted to show first of all. Which I can do in this video over here. So there's another projector here. But let me see if I can find a good example here.
At is the different categories in creating either.
Yes. Okay. So, do you see how here we have the synths and sequences? These are the main synths that are playing, these are the main ideas of the track. Do you see how I have one sequence here and it goes to another thing over here? And then halfway through, some of this sequence turns off. I don't know how well you can see that, but this sequence turns off and this sequence turns on. I'm doing this in a YouTube video so that I don't have to go into the actual project, because that will take a long time to load, and I don't want to do that. But you can see then this sequence starts to play, and then all of it stops, and then this stuff starts to play, and then it stops, and then a new thing comes in. This thing, by the way, isn't the same as this thing over here. So it's always switching to new sequences throughout the whole track. And then I have all of my one-shots that I started putting on, at least in this part. And that is what makes it extra interesting. Yes, I see the layers. It has nothing to do with layering. All of these are one idea. Don't think that you need to put several different sounds on top of each other. That is not the thing that I want you to take away from this. What I want you to take away from it is that I have an idea over here. I have an idea over here. Or I have an idea over here. I have an idea over here. I have an idea over here. And it never repeats. I'm never taking this sound and putting it here in the track or here in the track. And it's always different sounds. or different ideas. Sometimes like I take one sound over, but then I put a different sound on top so that it becomes a new idea. The main thing that you need to take away is that once I play something for 1 or sometimes 2 sections, so 16 bars or 32 bars, then it's gone. Then it's over, and I need to make new stuff for the other parts of the tracks. So it has nothing to do with the layering, it has to do with how you use stuff this way, linearly. Horizontally, I guess. Not vertically how many things are you stacking on top of each other, but horizontally how many things are you putting behind each other, basically. And then there's like you can almost see it as a second pass. You go over it again and you write all of the one-shots, all of the extra cool things that you put on top of it. Right, so I have a little vocal one-shots here, I have little effects here, I have atmospheres, as you can see over here, starting to put in. I have a bunch of different synth sounds that I'm putting in. And even these, from spot to spot, for me, are changing. What that means is that most of my tracks end up with 200, 250, sometimes 300 different sounds in the tracks. Good to use similar themes, notes, and melodies, but different sounds and arrangements and effects. Right? Not even different, not even same melodies. No. No, you want distinct ideas between the different tracks. Like, go listen to. I mean, it's not like set in stone, right? So if I go, I guess I closed it out again. I guess we can go look into a project. Why not? There aren't many tracks for feedback anyway, so it's not like I have to save time. Let's go into this project over here. Do I want to save this? No, of course not. Give me like a minute or something like that for this project to actually open. And then we can discuss it. So how are you guys today? Now that we're waiting. No, just kidding. It will just take a little bit of time to open, but then I'll show you what I actually mean by the way that I'm arranging different things. How many more tracks do we have after this? 1, 2. Okay. And it doesn't feel coherent or it gels together as a track. That's the challenge, I guess. Yeah. I want to show you kind of what it would look like. There are some things that I'm taking over. The main thing that is gluing your track together is going to be kick and bass and drums. But if you look at where all of the sequences are, you can see that there's very little overlap. Like this thing plays once. This idea plays once. This idea, okay, it plays a few times. Right? But even here, are these all the same melody? Yeah, they're all the same melody, but there's a different idea in that here the melody rises. Okay. This thing plays 3 times. Okay. Right? But this thing plays once. This thing plays once. This thing plays twice, which actually I rendered to audio, so this doesn't play. It's this thing that plays. This thing plays once here as a main idea, and then there's a little bit of it coming back here. This thing plays once. This thing plays once. And then again, a little bit of it comes back over here. This thing plays once over here, in the middle somewhere, and then towards the end over here. Then there's more empty MIDI tracks, and then this thing plays once again. So you're not necessarily trying to create something that is like continuously the same elements, but there is some cohesion in there, in the sense that sometimes an element comes back, sometimes there's like a little bit of a new thing. The main thing where you're going to get cohesion from is kick and bass and drums. Some of your one-shots, which you can see, they repeat a little bit more, like one-shot ideas. So I have a one-shot over here that also plays over here. I have this one-shot over here that then plays over here and over here. But you can also see that there's one shots that also, again, just play once, right? Like, look at the size of this MIDI clip versus the track that's in. You guys can probably not see it on YouTube. That's how small the MIDI clip is. So you can see how many different sounds I have in here and how many different things I have in here. And the cohesion only really comes from the fact that, at least for me, mainly the kick and bass is always the same. Right, this is the kick and bass. This is a completely different idea here. Then we have this idea over here. It's entirely different from what we were hearing before. This part over here, there's not a lot going on here. There's like a drum loop thing happening here, but then you go here. Completely like different idea. But there is some cohesion in this case in that the kick and bass is the same. And that is going to be true for 99% of psytrance tracks. There's very few psytrance tracks that will change bassline over here, then change bassline over here, then change bassline over here, then change it over here, then change it over here. There's almost zero tracks that will have different kicks throughout different parts of the drops and stuff like that. The kick is almost always the same kick throughout the whole track. So the cohesion of your track is coming in through the kick and bass. What you sometimes will see is that you'll have a second drop which is different. In fact, the track that I just played in the break has that, where the second drop, it has a different bass line, right? So you have, I can show that as well by just loading up the track real quick. Here. Don't mind all the mess, I guess. This is like a very standard 2-drop structure in that you have drop 1 and break or break and then drop 2 over here. This is a 3-drop structure, right? We have drop 1, break, drop 2, break, drop 3. What happens in this track over here is that this is the same bass line as this thing over here, and this is different bass line. And what I mean by that, it's like a different synthesis of bass line. It's not like playing a different melody or something. This is a gliding bass. And this is a rolling bass. But this is also rolling bass. The same rolling bass. There is a few melodic parts to it, but this is mainly like in this root note, so it doesn't really change much. But you'll see, like, for a kind of like classical 3-drop structure, that is how you get a little bit more diversity in your tracks by having a different bass line for the second drop. At least those are the standard ways to do it. I don't necessarily want to say like these are the rules, you have to do it like this. Of course, music is up for interpretation. And you can see with my workflow, the way that I'm working, what kind of a project that you're going to get. This project isn't finished, by the way. So I'm probably going to add 15 more, maybe 20 more tracks to this in terms of different sounds. And we're at 245 tracks. Now, granted, there's some groups involved in that. There's like 20 tracks or like 17 tracks worth of like helpers and like other tracks that aren't necessarily part of the song, but are part of the project. So this is like a MIDI clip that shows me the length. This is my master track and my reference track. Reference track. We have my marker track where I lay down the structure. I have different notes where I can just make a MIDI clip, and then I can say add cowbell if I want to, right? So there's like extra stuff in here. But I would guess that this is over 200 different sounds in the track once the production is finished, which is a lot. There's not a lot of music where that is like regularly the case. For my music, I think almost all of my songs that I'm currently working on for the new album that I'm currently working on have at least 200 different sounds in them. Save changes to this? No. Let me just quickly get a template set so that we can get back into it. I am going to take a quick break here. Let me put on the mix again, and then we'll get back in the feedback for you guys. It's just 10 minutes, and I'll put on some music for you guys to listen to, as always. Does it just get in my recommended? Yes, it does. Very nice. Okay. This is again the mix that I did for Eclipse, in this case for May. And right now I'll play the Mind Beat track that is coming out on the 15th of June on Eclipse. And I hope that you guys will enjoy the visuals and that kind of stuff as well. What a timing. What a timing. I hope you guys enjoyed that track. It's going to be out on the 15th of June. Of course, on Eclipse Records, for anybody that doesn't know. That's our label. Let me quickly set up the analyzers again. And then we'll move into the next track for feedback. Okay. We do have one more track over here, but the next one is going to be, again, Cosmic Currents with 38 Goa Trance demo. Let's see. Oh, I should play it from here, actually. Of course, because then we don't have autoplay. Very loud start. I love that Projector has a stream that encourages cooperation and good constructive criticism over the net. Thank you. That's exactly what I like. There's a lot going on in this intro. A bit hard to understand exactly what is happening. I like the kick and bass though. That does have a very Goa feeling. Oh no. I'll show you after this track, but something very big has happened at my household. Same synth as the last track. Be careful with that. If you're trying to build up like a portfolio of work, having the same synth in every track is probably not a good idea. You can maybe use it like once or twice, but then when you're releasing, make sure that they're not releasing after each other. You want a little bit of differences, of course, between tracks so that it shows that you're making different ideas, that you have different things that you're working with, that kind of stuff. I like that you're carrying over the rhythms here. Again, synths are becoming a little bit too loud. Also, this bass note is a lot louder than the rest of your bass line. The kick drum could have a bit more sub bass. Doesn't really punch through in the lower frequencies. Again, we have this same issue. I'm not going to say it too many times, but you're again using elements again and again. Also, at some point you do have to change up the rhythm. So always using the same rhythm is probably not a good idea. One of the things you may have noticed in the track that I played during the break, and a lot of my tracks as well, is that there's a fill at the end of every 16 bars. Right now this is not happening here, it's just the kick and bass continuing, and then you have like one bass note, which is different. What I would do is, after every 16 bars, or after every 15 bars, take the 16th bar and remove the kick and bass. Just play one kick on the like point where the bar starts, that 16th bar, and then have the rest of the bar for a drum fill or a different thing, or that's where you kind of transition into the different elements. The way that you're producing it, there's a few factors to it, but it's very quickly becoming boring, the track. One of the reasons is that it's always the same rhythm. The second reason is that there's not really the transition, so it doesn't really feel like the track is moving. It's just kind of like cuts, and then new synth plays, cuts, or 16 bars happen, cut, we move on to a new synth or a synth that we heard before, playing the same rhythm, and it just kind of continues like that. There's no pause in between. There's a lot of sound design in here that you could have used in the drop somewhere as well. Not necessarily to put under the other elements that you have, but just to switch up the sound design, right? Like this is very different sound design from all of the other stuff that you had. There's all of the other stuff that was playing very closely resemble each other in terms of sound design. So there's definitely some things that I would improve in this track. There's definitely some things that I would change in this track if you're still working on it. If not, there's definitely some things that I would take over into my new production to do differently. But I think I covered them also in the other track that you sent, and they're kind of like similar in the, not really the mistakes that they're made, but the ways that I would improve them. I think mistake is a very negative term, maybe a bit too negative for what I'm trying to get at with the way that I'm speaking here. When it comes to my stream, for those that are new here, I don't like to sit here and point out all of the positives that a track like this has. There are a lot of positives in here. There are a lot of cool things that you're doing. There are a lot of things that I like. But just sitting here while the track is playing for me and just saying, hey, I like that. Hey, I like this. Hey, I like sus and so, whatever. That's not really something that you learn from. So for that reason, I don't like to do that. I should remember to move my hand out of the path of the microphone. So that's not something that I do personally. I don't think that that's a nice way of learning. But there are a bunch of different cool things that you're doing in here. It's just that when the track is playing, I don't like to point them out. So that means that my feedback can sometimes come off as overly negative. That's not because I'm like overly negative about other people's music. That's just because I only say the negative things because that's what we can learn from the most. Don't take it personal. It's not like a personal thing or personal like attack on you or anybody that submits. It's just like I want to minimize the amount of times that I'm talking so that other people can hear it in the chat and they can also give feedback. And I'm not just constantly talking over it with information that you don't really need to know. Right? Like, I like this, I like that. As I said, you don't really learn from that, in my opinion. Next up, we have Corp over here, who's also new. Welcome to Discord and welcome to the stream, by the way. Corp 1 with fuck yeah, brah. Let's see. Fucking yeah, bro. Sorry. Fucking is different than fuck. Fucking is something that you do. Anyway, let's have a listen. Not really a fan of the melodic atmosphere type thing that you're trying to do here. kick and bass could also be better. I'm not really a fan of the tonality of it. I'll try to find a place where the kick and bass is on its own. This drum fill is very loud. Not really a fan of how the drums are mixed. A big problem that I see with the drums is that you left in your fundamental frequency of the snare. You probably want to remove that by just high passing your snare so that you just have the noise part of it, the stuff that is happening over here, kind of. This lower fundamental doesn't really serve a purpose and it just clashes with your kick. So you don't really need that. Kick and bass is fairly quiet, but it's also just lacking a lot of power. I think your bass line isn't processed. There's like no phase shift happening, because this looks like a saw wave to me. This just looks like a standard saw wave click here. Wait. Why is it so... open? The bass doesn't really have a plug to it. Like, it's very open, it's not very modulated. I'll explain that later.
Nah, does it? Oh, he looks like he's done this before. Oh, I'm scared. What are you gonna be scared?
Oh, it just kind of stops randomly. There's a lot to improve here. The main thing that I would do for the kick and bass, if you want a stronger kick, first of all, what I would recommend, to be honest, is just buy my pack of kick drums here. These come in a variety of different BPMs that you can use for them. A variety of different keys, so you just have whatever you need. These are all common keys for making psytrance, by the way, for anybody wondering. Not all of them, not all the keys are in here. Like, there's no C in here because nobody really writes psytrance in C. It doesn't really work for the bass line. But for the bass, when it comes to like a bass patch, say that you're working with, this is why I like my bass patch so much, the one that I sell in Psychedelic Essentials Volume 3. Oh, way too high. What you have is kind of like this, in terms of the bass sound. And we can even look at what that looks like. Oh no, this is the wrong thing, sorry. I want one with a sub bass. Not even this one. This is so annoying. Can I get one with a sub bass, please? Okay, let me just... Sorry. Here. Yes. So what I'm seeing is kind of like there's more going on in this bass patch that you don't have to worry about in the beginning, but your bass line is just doing like this, where it's like the click going down in the waveform, and then it's just sliding up, right? Mine is looking, it's not really looking like a saw wave because this is like a very complex bass patch. But what you'll usually find is that bass lines look more like this. Right, where there's like more waviness to it. And we can go even higher with this one if we really want to. And then you get really that processed wave line, in the sense that there's like a click happening and then it kind of wiggles in between, as opposed to just being like a flat line going down. And you can see it even in here, like it's not a flat line going down, it's like wiggling. That is all of the phasing that is happening. So that comes from the processing. In this case, if you say you use operator, so that is not going to work inside of Serum, of course. You cannot load Serum patches inside of operator. But if you do have Serum, then this is a great patch for you to work with, which you'll find over on my Gumroad website, or the Gumroad page, of course, where I sell all of my products. This basically, it happens in the wavetable, but what you want to do, say that you have a standard bass patch. Let's just make a bass patch. Again, I like to do that with Serum because I like Serum more. Let's set this to 24 dB per octave, and let's use an LFO here for the modulation, because that is already tied to the length of the note and we don't have to do any calculations. One of the things that I heard is that your modulation was basically doing this. Like it stayed very flat. Kind of like that. Whereas with a sidetrance bassline, you really want that strong click. Right? This stuff. This is what you want. You want your tick and then kind of coming through it. Not something like that, just where it kind of clicks like that. But this is still sounding very basic. So then the next step is going to be your phase shift, which is just putting on multiband stuff. So as you can see, this is a multiband plugin. 1, 2, 3, 4 bands over here. And it's not doing any processing. You can see the compressor isn't processing. The ratio is 1:1. If I set up compression over here, that is what it would be. But we're just setting this 1:1. So this isn't doing actual compression on it. It's not changing, or it's just doing the multiband part. It's just splitting up the frequency spectrum into 4 bits, determined by where these positions are over here. And then you get phase shift because of that, and then it sums it back together. It's not actually processing individual bands. The processing isn't doing anything. I can set the dry wet to 0 and it wouldn't make a difference. Right? So the next part for you when it comes to the bassline is this stuff. The setting up the filter cutoffs in a way that makes it sound better. And then you duplicate it again. Maybe set it over here. And you can start to hear that you get that zappiness to the bass sound. If I turn this off, we get just a click. If we get this, you can hear it goes like zoom, zoom, zoom a little bit, right? That is kind of what you want. You want a little bit of that punch in there. I explain all of this stuff, of course, in my ultimate guide to kick and bass. So if you're ever in doubt on how any of this works, check out that video. It is 3.5 hours long, and that is for a reason, because this stuff is complex. This stuff is complicated. To translate that into like actual practical ways of making kick and bass. But it's important. I think I know how to proceed with my process. I think this is good. Thank you for the input. And yes, exactly what I needed to hear. You're welcome. And also, I would like to point out that this isn't really like a finalized track, right? So this is still just 2 minutes of like a demo thing. There are no fills in here. There's no pauses, no breaks. There's a little bit, I would say overall, there was a little bit few elements happening here. There's just that atmosphere, which personally I'm not really a fan of. I like, if you're going for more like a dark side sound, I would check out the video that I did on like sidetrance atmospheres, where you can get much cooler atonal kind of atmospheres that just kind of come in and come out, that kind of stuff. If you're sticking with stock plugins, yeah, of course. If you're sticking with stock plugins, you can do the processing for multiband with multiband dynamics here. Hell, you can do it with what is it? EQ3. EQ3 is nothing more than a 3-band splitter with 2 different crossovers. All this will do is split it up, and as long as you don't set volumes over here, it will just split it up into 3 bands and then sum it back together. So you do this 1, 2, 3 times. You get more processed feeling. If you turn this off again, you just get your normal saw wave. Do you hear the difference? This is just doing multiband split and then sums it back together. No processing whatsoever, other than the fact that it's multiband and then putting it back together. Maybe that makes no sense for you guys. If it doesn't, again, the ultimate guide to kick and bass, save it to your playlist, go watch it. It explains everything. Everything you need to know about kick and bass creation is explained in that video. Anyway, let's move on. How many more tracks do we have? We have one more track here. I have been streaming for 3 hours, so I'll maybe finish up for today. I guess I will. Yeah, I have some editing work to do. I did show that earlier, right? The amount of editing that I did. Did I? If I go into... Where is it? Here. Yeah, the amount of editing work that I did this week. 85 hours of Premiere Pro this week. Now, there is some AFKing in there. I left my PC on 2 times overnight this week. So that's maybe 10, 15, no, a little bit more. Like there's like almost 20 hours that I'm not at it. And I go out for a walk sometimes. So I would say like 50 hours of this is probably me actually working on editing. But just to give you an idea how much I work making content for you guys. It's not as simple as it looks. In 1 week, just the editing part is like a full-time job. And that's why I cannot hire an editor to do this kind of stuff, because I would need to pay him a full-time salary. Him or her. Them, I guess. Final track. I'll close the queue here. And as you can imagine, after the stream I have to edit again. So that's, well, that's why I closed the queue now. 3 hours is good enough for stream length. Anyway, as I said, Cosmic Currents with 46 high-tech demo. That's here. Very bright, fizzly start here. Not a lot of progression in this. I like your kick and bass, but your filter should probably close a little bit faster. Also, you should resample your bass line. Not really a fan of your open hats. That stuff is louder than the main kick and bass. That's probably not something that you want. At this point, the main synths should probably change. Excellent stream today. Great project feedback and excellent technical information for 3 hours. There's a tip for some more candy. Thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you're the same person that also gave me a tip on the short. But I did also get a tip on the short while I was streaming. I checked it while I was on my break. But if you are, thank you for that as well. If you aren't, I didn't see the name, I just saw that I got one. Is the tempo too fast? No. This is high tech. In fact, this is fairly slow high tech. It can be a lot faster. I hope there's going to be more change, because this track is another 8 minutes. If it's just this for another 8 minutes, then it's way too boring. Because it's just the same synth. There's also no breakdown in this track, at least not that I can see in the waveform. On SoundCloud. Sounds like the levels aren't consistent or key tracking isn't working as expected. What can happen is that, I don't know which system you're listening on to it, and there's also YouTube compression. There's a lot of things that go into it when it comes to low level volume. But technically, if you don't do anything, then it should be okay. What can be the case is that at its default key, your speaker isn't able to reproduce its lower frequency, so if it goes up, more stuff is reproduced. Also, the higher the frequency goes, the more sensitive we are to like the higher harmonics, and there's more higher or there's stronger harmonics in the area that we're more sensitive to. Because we don't technically hear these low frequencies. Like, you don't hear them with your ears if you're listening on headphones. You don't hear them if you're listening on even on speakers. You don't really hear them, you feel them. If you're listening at a low volume version of this track, you're not going to hear those lower frequencies. You're going to feel them if you turn up the volume. Then you can feel them move your chest. So it can be the case that for whatever reason you just don't hear or perceive the lowest harmonics in the same way as you do when it goes up, even though they are the same volume technically. And it's debatable if you want to actually account for that idea. I like this part here. There's a very nice atmosphere happening somewhere. You can also check the cleanliness of the kick and bass, which it's all over the place. It's bleeding into itself here, or into the bass line here. It's also bleeding into the kick drum actually, over here. It didn't look like it over here, but here it does do that. You almost still have to think of song structure no matter what. Yes, there's not a lot of structure to this. It feels like it's repeating the same however many beats over and over again. It feels like it's the same feel with the distorted kick. And there's not a lot happening to change stuff up. Honestly, I like these things more, where you just go up for one note and then you can move up and down so you get some bouncy feeling. I like that more than when the key goes up for the whole beat. I do like that as well. But I'm a bit more of a fan of the just like bouncy groove kind of feeling. I feel like these zapping sounds have been playing throughout the whole track, which is a very bad idea. But I guess this is the same problem that we talked about before with your other tracks, and that you're constantly reusing the same elements. Individually, I like, say that we listen to this 16 bar section over here. This individual 16 bar section is sounding really cool. But the problem is that we're now 9 minutes into the track and this is the only thing that we've really heard. Overall, the vibe is absolutely there. The sound design is absolutely there. The structuring just isn't. Even the mix is sounding okay. You could remove some 500 Hz mix-wise, but that's not your biggest problem. Like it's not sounding too off for me. I also like the bass melodies that you're doing here. Especially the last few parts, but it just repeats. And at some point, there's no other way to say it. It just gets stale, it just gets boring. Overall, very cool track though. I like it. Sounded cool. I think that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream and I hope that the feedback was helpful. My shirt is all over the place, not looking very nice, but that's okay because I'm finishing up anyway. That means that throughout the whole stream I was looking like this and nobody said anything. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope that, as I said, the feedback was helpful. And I hope to see you again next time. As always, I'm going to try to squish in a stream also during the week somewhere, if I have the time. But as you guys have seen from before, when I was talking about how much I edit, I don't really have a lot of time nowadays. I'm making a lot of content. In fact, today, all in all together, I posted two shorts, a long format tutorial, a long format conversations with projector, and the mix, and then the stream. So technically 6 videos just today. And then tomorrow there's 2 shorts, then the day after there's 2 shorts and a long form and conversations with projectors. So I'm posting like on average 3 videos a day, which is insane. But anyway, yeah, that means that there's a lot of work to do, and I hope you guys enjoy